welcome to another episode of the Side Hustle Experiment podcast. Today we have Jonathan. Juke does Amazon, 7-figure Amazon seller, first person to be on the pod for a second time. We're going to talk about a lot of great stuff today. We're going to talk about how he got about 20 grand of inventory restricted, what he did about that, how he handled that. He actually handled it like much better than I thought. He had like a whole Instagram story on it, and he was like not bitter at all. Usually when that happens to people, they're very bitter and mad at Amazon. That was not the case. We'll get into that. And we were really talking before this pod, and we're like, we need to start right now because we're starting to get into some good stuff. So thank you for being here, and tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then we'll
honored to be here. As I was informed, first recurring guest. So appreciate you guys having me back. I thoroughly enjoy this. As far as the Amazon stuff goes, I've been doing this. I just had my 4-year anniversary.
Nice.
First 2 years was RA. I moved states, went OA, pretty much cold turkey. I'm pretty active. I source every day. And outside of this, I have a small business. I've got a young family. So staying busy and trying to find some me time as well, and always trying to improve in all aspects.
Well, let's hear about the juicy stuff first. What's up with this 20K hit?
Yeah.
Just want to take a quick break. Today is my birthday, my actual birthday, and instead of asking you for a gift, I want to give you a gift. So I want to give you the exact spreadsheet that I use to run my Amazon business, all the different columns that I use, how it's set up. There's about a 20 or 30 minute video showing exactly how I use it, how to replicate it, why I use it, how I use it, everything. Totally for free. There is a link below under the free resources section where you can just get it absolutely free. And if you want to show some love for my birthday, definitely check out the Advanced Arbitrage Tactics School community and like and subscribe to this channel. You guys are the best.
So to preface, I've always been someone, honestly, like, I think because I've had a corporate job and I have a business outside of this. So I really grasp how unique of an opportunity Amazon is, like to be piggybacking off. I'm not saying it's easy, but to piggyback off of like $1 trillion brand and their trucks and their marketing and their website for like $500, it's unheard of. Like truly, it's unheard of. And I think in like 20 years, we'll look back and be like, wow, those times were like the gold rush, So long story short, sell a ton of vitamins and supplements and have been for years. And just coincidentally, I probably had more than I've ever had of like 5 or 6 brands in stock. Thursday, my prep center messages me, hey, this is showing restricted. I'm like, all right, whatever. Oh, hey, this is showing restricted. I'm like, oh shit, like this isn't good. So go to find out, about 5 or 6 brands, vitamins and supplements, became red restricted. And just to clarify, I can't seek approval through invoices. Like it's blocked off to me, right? And it just kind of threw me for a loop. And I reached out to Amazon, which is like, the worst experience ever when you're going through it. And long story short, nothing really got resolved, but I wasn't able to sell these brands. I am convinced I never got heads up or notification. Fortunately, with being on social media, I let the world know. And some people message me like, hey, I know so-and-so that got like an email with 100 different brands this is happening to. And I know people that got none. So that didn't make it better, but it made me feel a little more at peace that like, okay, this is happening. This is a major mishap in my opinion by Amazon, but like, it doesn't feel as isolating, even if it's an error or whatever. So long story short, I had a lot of inventory that I had to figure out solutions for, which I have, and we can get into, but that was the worst thing that's happened to me with Amazon. There's always pros and cons, but like, that's what happened to me. That was like, I don't know, 2 months ago, maybe.
What'd you end up doing? What's like what was the solution? Did you ever still restricted?
Still can't touch that stuff. And I know many sellers that are restricted, red restricted in quite a few. Some are still selling them. For me, once the dust settled, it was like, okay, this is reality. And what am I going to do with it? Right. And I had everything sent back to me. I opened a Walmart seller account ASAP. and it forced my hand to figure it out really quickly. And I did. And I've been just chipping away. And I think I've done like, I don't know, 15K in sales just on that stuff alone. So
Wow.
like I'm getting there, and it's all going to be sold. And I think a couple things saved me. One, all the product is like good selling product, right? So that's one thing that it might take more time, but if you have good product will, find homes. And I wasn't really concerned about profit at this point. I just wanted it. If I get my money back, great, right? So that was my main thing. Very, very. I'm so glad I didn't have to rely on eBay, and that's why I will think like, if there's a silver lining, thankfully Walmart's around, and I was able to do it. And I was even thinking too. I mean, at the end of the day, things in perspective. I've been selling on Amazon for 4 years. If I've made well into six figures profit, and let's just say this was all a loss, 20K, it's still just a very, 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 very small percentage. I'm not saying it didn't suck. It sucked. And I'm not saying like I would wish that on anyone, but like it wouldn't give me enough reason to quit Amazon, even if I didn't get $1 back. When you really step out and think big picture of what I've done and what I'm going to continue to do.
Yeah, that's not too bad at all. Like you said, put in that perspective of that much profit you've made, not a big of a deal. It's a good thing you didn't panic too. I think a lot of people get that situation and panic.
I will say, I think I try to have like, I don't know, for lack of a better term, a stoic approach of like accepting reality and then what can I do, right? I'm a human. It's frustrating, you whatever, but like it's, what am I going to do? Figure out a solution the best I can. And I really am glad for Walmart. And it really has changed my mindset too, because when you get so dependent on certain brands, it's very easy if you have a X amount of budget to just be like, throw it all to these because you're very knowledgeable and you can spend it quickly. And then this happens, right? So it's really forced me on things that maybe just for round numbers, I used to rip off 30 of. Now I'm doing 3 different items of 10, right? And overall, for long term, that's going to be a net positive, in my opinion. That I believe very confidently.
Yep, 100%. Well, I guess that kind of leads into something we were talking about a little bit earlier. Why do you think that happened, like that brand restriction? Because I have my theories, and I've said this on so many podcasts. So, like, when you say this stuff, I'm like, this does kind of prove my theory a bit more. But I'd like to hear your thought on, like, what really caused that type of technical
Sorry about that.
You're good. You're technical difficulty. What was I asking before? We didn't hear any of what you said. So,
yeah, you were just about to say it was about red restricted. It was about why do I think? And you were prefacing that you've gone on other podcasts saying why. So did you go on and explain why?
No, I have one question that I wanted to ask that like before Drew asked his question, and we'll roll into that. So I really liked your frame on that when you were saying, I was just like, what can I do about this? And I think in your head, maybe the worst case scenario is I'm out 20 grand. And I think sometimes when you have the worst case scenario in your head, or, okay, let me write down the worst thing that could possibly happen. In your head, you're like, that's not going to happen. Like, I'm not going to be out 20. I might be out 10 or 5 or something like that. And it just allows you, like you were saying, you're super calm about it. You're like, because I know the worst case scenario is not going to happen. Now it becomes a game of, what can I do to mitigate this and get the best case scenario out of it?
Yeah. I will say, I think more than anything was just this level of frustration, because in the back of all of our minds, I think everyone has an understanding of like Amazon, it's their sandbox. And I'm fine with brands going away. Seriously. Like that doesn't bother me at all. But if I'm right that I didn't really get proper heads up, it's just like the ultimate frustration. And it's just another reminder, like, and I've talked about this before, but like all eggs not in this basket forever. It's still a great opportunity. And actually something else we can talk about. It's one of the reasons I've been hesitant to go into the influencer program too. I know you're doing that, John, so that could be a good talking point. But it just comes back to more of how much control am I going to give Amazon, right? And maybe I'm naive, but like mentally that's where I'm at,
Yeah, for the influencer program, I look at it much differently because there's no cost. The
Right,
cost is my
right.
time. I'm actually just past like a big milestone. You're not supposed to talk about like numbers or they could like suspend you or whatever. So I'm not gonna do
Okay.
that. But it's doing really, really well.
Awesome,
Now, do
man.
I want to lose that money? No. But if I lose that money, there's no inventory there. It's just shit. It sucks. Like that's the
No,
only downside to
yeah,
it. I don't have to bring any inventory back, which is incurred expense. For this, it's just more of, hey, I'm making this extra money. You want to make videos? At this point, I'm getting brand deals now. So people are actually
yeah,
sending me inventory and paying me to make a video for this. So
yeah,
now I actually have more inventory than I started with in this case scenario. Not that it's
yeah,
worth a lot, or who knows, maybe it will be if the brand blows up. But that's kind of how I look at that. And that's why I like the opportunity. This is an opportunity for me to make, I don't know, 45 to 60-second video. Then if it does sell something, great. If it
yeah.
doesn't, that's fine too. If it does, it's just kind of gravy, and then it's just like building close to like almost 1,000 videos now.
Wow.
So I don't know. For me, that just seems like a great way to make
Yeah,
extra
risk
money. You
reward.
don't have to put anything out, and then you also have the benefit of you get to travel if you want to.
Yeah.
Because I've been staying in a lot of Airbnbs and doing stuff like that.
Uh,
Whenever we go to like a game or a concert, instead of staying in a hotel, we're staying in an Airbnb. It's more money, but technically it's a business expense, and that's going to make me much, much more money like in a month or two. So
yeah.
that's why I like that.
Yeah. No, listen, that makes sense. I think maybe I'm a little butthurt or whatever because, like, it's like tomorrow. You're right, though. Like, tomorrow they could say, oh, well, the commission changes to this. But again, conversation we've had in the past, risk reward. Like, there's not a whole lot of risk involved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And with that too, there's like a lot of bad actors. You see some people who have partnerships now, like doing influencer programs. Both of them are like suspended their accounts. So it has all the same like FBA stuff tendencies,
Yeah.
but their downside, there really is no downside. Especially if you go to Airbnb after a concert, you still had a great time, like regardless. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I guess to back to that previous question. So why do you think that happened? Like in your opinion?
Yeah. Yeah. I really can't come up with a great answer. The only thing that I think there is similarity with some of those brands is that not always, because I never really compete with things that Amazon sells consistently. I just happen to believe that maybe they're doing handshake deals or making business deals behind the scenes. They have all this data now, and now they're going to sell the brands. Like, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's the one huge commonality between all these brands that are getting suspended. Section 3 is this stuff. And if you've noticed, it's all dangerous stuff. Stuff that if you ingest it or you put it on your body, you will get
Mm,
hurt. If I
yeah,
sell a bunch of fake cups or I sell a bunch of fake shoes, okay, your feet aren't going to fall off, stuff like
right,
that. But
right.
if you put on bad makeup, if you put on bad supplements, bad grocery, I think that'll be another one that gets hit. You have people like suffering real life testimonial bad
Yeah,
things happening to you. And I think those brands are realizing that Amazon is just a huge, big, it's going to get bigger and bigger. They want their brand to basically be, okay, we have a website and we have Amazon. Those things are basically equal. And if we have all these people selling fake stuff on here and jacking up the reputation of our brand, it's going to cause a bunch of issues. So I think
yeah,
that you're going to see continued rollouts in vitamins, in supplements, and all that stuff because it can damage the consumer, which is just like
yeah.
really, really dangerous to toy with, which I could be wrong, but that's just what I'm putting all these pieces together and kind of seeing that because it's not like you're getting hit on random brands. It's dangerous goods that can, like,
Yep.
that can damage somebody.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
no,
think.
that's fair.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that's a fair assessment. Makes sense. And the only thing I'm thinking, and maybe this is like wishful thinking, is like, but if you provide authentic documents, doesn't that, and you have insurance, like, doesn't that? And I would just think that, like, for Amazon, they have such deep pockets, and I'm sure they don't want to do settlements, but I'm sure they budget for settlements. And like, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but like, I'm selling authentic goods, right? And I have insurance, and I have documentation. So I don't know. I don't have the answer, but like, would they, is it not, I mean, listen, I know they know their business more than I know their business, but like, I know they've made a lot of money off of me selling. I mean, I say a lot of money, not for them, but like to a
Yeah.
normal person, a nice chunk from those brands I've sold, multiplied times thousands and thousands of sellers. I don't know. I don't know, but there's got to be a reason behind it, and I'm sure it's probably a combination of things.
I think you might be right too that they're maybe buying more brand direct. I think a theory I would have is they're evaluating what issues, like certain brands or supplements or vitamins. There's lots of issues they have with third party sellers. Right? It's just easier for us to buy. We have the money to buy this stuff. Like, let's just kind of kick other people off. I think there's just also
Yeah.
weird stuff behind the scenes. Like, it wouldn't, I know, like, they're always like, you put your own label on it and that's yours, and everything that's associated with that is now your problem. I can almost see in a weird sense that someone else sending the product, it's someone else's product, there's lots of issues with it, and somehow it gets assigned to you. Or someone checks off
Yeah.
that was Jonathan's stuff, and they're like, that's it. Like, Jonathan's not selling this stuff anymore. And meanwhile, it might not have even been you. Like, the only reason I say this is
Yeah.
because when I was selling a lot of books, I got hit with like 3 or 4 counterfeit textbooks, and the chain of custody for that, I couldn't recover the book. The person said, "Oh, it's counterfeit." The textbook company takes it. I can't see the book. I can't verify. They won't take a picture of the back of it to prove that the FNSKU is mine. Like, there's just all sorts of things. So I don't know. I could see that being one of them too. Or Amazon's like,
Yeah.
you know what? We lost Jonathan's stuff. We're just gonna send this other person. So if there's issues with that, like, we're gonna blame Jonathan
Yeah.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
well.
You never listen. I always I have a saying like you just chalk it up to Amazon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if the opportunity wasn't super unique, it wouldn't make sense for a lot of people. You know what I mean? Like, but I still feel like we're in that pretty good opportunity phase.
For sure.
Yeah, 100%. I guess what we were talking about right before we got on this pod, what was the thing you were saying? You know you're really good at it, so you don't really mind all the complaining and all the things happening, because I'm guessing your thought process is the cream rises to the top, right?
Yeah, no, totally. And I don't say that in like an arrogance thing or anything like that, but like I know that I source every single day. And I know the more and more I do this, like I'm getting better and better and better. And so for me, every day I'm just kind of reminded like, oh wow, I was introduced to a new site. Well, I know how you bring me to a new brand or a new site and I will find profitable products all day long. Like I really will. So it's more of just getting to those new sites and new brands, whether that's through sharing leads, a leads list, reverse, storefront, my version of storefront stocking, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I still have these moments day in and day out that like there's that I'm just scratching the surface. I'm like, oh, I was too dependent on certain brands and categories, to be honest. Like I'm just scratching the surface. And if people don't realize like still how good of an opportunity it is, or that, blanket statement, everything's tanking. All my stuff's not tanking, and don't get me wrong, stuff does tank,
Yeah.
and you can read something perfectly, right? And but you start to realize when you put in enough reps, it's like, oh wow, well there's a commonality here. Why is this tanking? Because, well, I bought it from this site when it was a huge sale, and clearly everyone else knows about that sale. So now I know that's not where I need to triple down on, right? But I notice when I buy from this site during this time of year, it doesn't tank. What gives, right? And it's just body of work. I'm in the trenches. I do the work every single day. And like, just like anybody getting better at anything, it's like, I don't know, if someone's in great shape because they run 2 miles every day and someone's saying, a half a mile is killing them. It's like, I don't know. It's just like you've proven to yourself that you're going to show up and you're going to get better, and you've been hit a punch in the gut enough times that you keep showing up. You prove to yourself like I'll adapt to this too, and that's not just Amazon, but as I get older, just more and more life experience, and like I always keep showing up. And again, not an arrogance thing. It's just like I do the work, and that's really what it boils down to, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think
that's a
that's
good way to put
the almost frame you need to have. I was just kind of laughing when people are just like, "Oh, we can't sell Nike, or new sellers can't sell Nike." It's like this big tragedy. It's like that's one brand out of hundreds of thousands of brands. Yes, it's like a big brand, but it is what it is. And I think a lot of people
Yeah.
do think too. It's just kind of when one thing tanks, like, oh, everything tanks. And it's like, no, you made a poor decision, or maybe all the data was there. I mean, there's stuff all the time where I'm like, this on paper works, and then all of a sudden 40 people jump on the listing. Historically, there's only been
Right.
5 or 6 people at most. It is what it is, and that doesn't mean everything tanks. And usually when stuff tanks, in my opinion, it's usually when you replenish. And, other people see it, and now there's 2-3 times as many people on there. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Another thing too, like I find myself more and more and more, I'm more proud of the good buys that I decline than the buys I make now, because every time I do that, I know I'm clearing way for better and better products. When I can look back, not even that long ago, I would have bought this product, I would have bought this product, but now I'm like, that's not good enough anymore because I have more body of work. And so, like, it doesn't take me that much longer. It just takes a sense of discipline and confidence that I'm going to wait it out a little bit. In general, I can't emphasize this enough. Like, Amazon FBA is just not passive. It's not like, it doesn't take you 40 hours a week to achieve 6-figure profits once you get going. But like, I have no interest in outsourcing my sourcing, because like, that's my differentiator. Sourcing is the most important thing by a mile, by miles. And I'm really good at it. That's my skill set. That's my advantage, right? At least that's the way I see it. So like, and I don't mind it. I really don't. So like, with that combination, the years I've put in, the mindset, the enjoyment, it's just like, I'm just going to, continue showing up and make better and better decisions.
Yep. 100%. No, it makes sense. I would just sit here and debate about it, but I don't want to.
No.
The only thing I'll say about it is,
Please.
because obviously, like, I'm probably the biggest seller that I've talked to that's ended up quitting, like, and that publicly quit. Let's just say that first. A lot of people.
Yeah, that's a big
I just
clarification
don't
for sure.
because I don't have anything to hide either. Like, yeah, it's not like I was mentioning it way back, but I just try to follow. Like, I heard a quote about this of, what are the top people doing in an industry? Like, what are they telling you to do versus what are they actually doing? And the top people in this industry aren't, us. It's people doing 10 million, 15 million, $20 million a year. And I noticed that a lot of those guys are pivoting like super heavy to info, or they're just really bearish on Amazon for an extent. And you can see this on Twitter. If you go on there and look at these private label guys that are doing like $30 million, $20 million a year, they're really bearish on it. And they're trying to diversify and that kind of thing. And I think that it's just like not a good macro trend. Now, micro, like, you work hard enough, you have your edge, you're going to make it work. Honestly, you'll probably never not make money with Amazon. That's the reality of it, because you just have the skills to do it. But I think as a macro thing, I don't think it's trending in a great direction. And I think that just because you guys are good, or like I was good and that type of thing, I try not to put too much stock into that, because it just doesn't matter as much on a macro trend. That's the only like big argument I have against it, I guess.
Yeah, no, listen, I don't disagree. And I always think of Amazon as a sprint. Okay. I don't know how long it's going to last for me. I think it's got at least a handful of years left, if not more. I can't, even if I diversify majorly, I can't, at this point, there's a handful of products are like, I don't know, every month I could probably make at least a couple grand, like with an hour a week. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I can't ever see getting rid of that at this point. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, for me, and I think we've talked about this before, it's not just reinvest. It's like, here's my budget. I want to continue making better buys, and then I want to park that elsewhere. Right. To me, it's kind of like a great source of active income. That's like the best way I can put it. And because I've put in so much time, there's a slight sense of pot commitment, right? Because it does kind of just flow pretty easily at this point. But like, Yeah, I'd like to get into other things that aren't maybe as fickle or dependent. I've talked about this before with you guys. I love the concept of real estate for long-term stuff. Um, but you always have to have active income, and for me, this is a great source of that for now, type of thing. And I'm not trying to like backpedal. Like I've always said this stuff. I've been saying this stuff for a
Yeah.
while. And I think to what you were saying, Drew, on the macro, yes. But but me as my individual lane, it is super micro, and that's all I'm really concerned about for the short term.
Yep, I think that makes sense 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that
for the most part.
sometimes like where I have this sentiment that's very bearish or like negative, I guess you could see it as like, I'm not talking about like, you're never going to make money again. That's not what I'm saying. Like more so it's just like, look at all of it,
The trend.
And it's so much easier too, man, when you're out of it. Like I realize the more that I'm out, because I never talk about it except for this podcast. Like it's literally the only conversations I have about it. It's weird how like the cognitive dissonance I had about certain things when I was there. Like if I could go back, I would do it all differently, like entirely.
Yeah.
And funny enough, the sourcing thing you were talking about, I was very anti outsourcing the sourcing, that type of thing. I think I would probably start the business of more of a try to get it's a passive thing. Just because if you can get some dialed in SOPs of like what you're actually sourcing, and I'm like working with a guy right now that has all this stuff built out, it'd be hard to fail if you could just deploy energy from other people into this stuff. And I just didn't have that before, but I know a lot of guys what are the biggest guys doing? That's like what a lot of them are doing. So trying to follow those big guys that like control the macro, really, that's kind of what I more so look at, which is funny because I would have never said that when I was actually doing it. Because I said the same thing you did. I'm like, that's the only thing I bring to the table, which is kind of true, but I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting to look at it now from an outside perspective for sure.
Yeah, and I also think that you don't know what you don't know. Like when you're first starting, like it's easy to say now from day one, you would start with that, but like at day one, you don't know how to find anything profitable, right? So then you continue to get better and better and better. Like, and I'm not speaking to your example, but just generally speaking, and I should say this too, when I say stuff online or podcast, whatever, I'm typically speaking to the masses. The masses are thrilled if they can make $2,000 extra a month, right? So those people, I'm saying, get good at sourcing. I'm not talking really about the multi-7-figure sellers with SOPs and VAs. I'm talking about you're starting off and you don't know what you're talking about, but you hear VAs and it's like, oh, I need to get a VA. Like you're nowhere close. Like even us, and I don't say this with arrogance, just from a statistic standpoint, we're probably top 1% of arbitrage sellers, right? When you really break it down. And again, like that's not to brag. I'm just saying like most people, are doing fractions of that. That's all.
I almost think at this point, if you're going to be doing it for 4 or 5 years, you have to be like almost top 1%. Like you can't, there's just too much loss and too much stuff that can go wrong at a game that you're spending 20, 30, 40, 50 grand a month. Like you can't be doing that mediocre at all.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, listen, I think it's great because it's a true taste of entrepreneurship and, doing your own thing with very low barrier to entry. But I think generally speaking, you talk about hindsight's 2020, right? I think something's to be said about equity building, right? Whether that's PL, private label, whether that's real estate, whether that's a business. That's one of my only knocks on Amazon. But I would also, again, devil's advocate, if I put in 3 hours a day and I'm making into 6-figure profits, like that's not bad either, and then you take it and deploy it into appreciating things. So like, I will say one beautiful thing about Amazon, truly, you can make $500 a month to go on a vacation every year, or you can make well into 6-figure profits, and there's everything in between, and I think that's pretty unique.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I guess you want to talk about this crossroads with the other business. I guess that's a good segue into that. So where's your crossroads coming from?
Yeah, so let me kind of set the stage here for you guys, right? So for anybody not familiar, I started a brewery touring business 7 years ago in Florida. I have the location there, and I'm now in Asheville, North Carolina, which for anybody not familiar, it's like a very touristy, very, very brewery centric city, like one of the best beer cities in the country. Okay. My vision, and this was actually before Amazon, and I've done other things, by the way. I've flipped a couple of houses. I've had a detailing business. I've always been a hustler, right? Um, and my thought was always to franchise. And I've always invested in branding and blood, sweat, and tears, and we can legally franchise at this point in time. The thing is, I just think now the ceiling on it is only so high for each market, right? And part of me is like so pot committed. I've put years into this. That was the vision. But now as I get older and I better understand my skill set and stuff, like to me, keeping Asheville is a no-brainer because at this point I have tour guides, it's busy. I've done all the hard part. But like South Florida, I'm not there and it's not making very much money. And like, and then I even think of like best case scenario with franchising, like even if we open 20 of them, right? That'll take another couple years. If I make 20K per franchisee and 5% royalties, even, I'm just like, what is the best case scenario, right? And so anyway, I'm just at this crossroads of like, I feel like I'm at this point in time where it's either package it all up and try to sell it to someone that wants to take it and run with it and franchise it, or basically cut my ties with South Florida, let it go, sell the vehicles, get some cash, and just allow Asheville to be this passive thing. It's like, now as I get older, it's like, and again, it's a confidence thing. It's like, you can do anything, you can't do everything, right? And everything is an opportunity cost. So when I do Amazon, I'm not doing something else. And when I'm doing the beer bus, I'm not doing something else. And I don't know, like maybe you can talk to it, little Drew, like you had a good thing going and like what was the turning point to like, what was your rationale to walk away from something that was working? Because in theory, I would imagine you're going one step back, two step forwards, right?
Yeah.
And that had to be scary. And especially because you did it publicly, you couldn't really backtrack on that because you exited the way you did, right? And you kind of had your word on that. And so feel free to chime in with that and your guys' thoughts as a whole with like my crossroads or like what you guys think, or if you think about that stuff at all.
Yeah, it's funny you say.
If you're still listening to the podcast at this point, you are into it and a fan, and we really appreciate that. If you could do us a solid and like, subscribe, and do all that stuff, it really helps the podcast grow. And secondly, if you could tag us on Instagram, just take a picture of what part you are at the podcast. If you like it, tell us what you think about it. Tag me at Side Hustle Experiment, and I will definitely share it. Now let's get back to the podcast.
I did all that on purpose. Like I was talking to John about that last year of like, I'm going to make this announcement. I'm going to do this thing and I'm going to sell something. So I like definitely burn like I can't go back on this. And the reason I did that was all for what you were just saying. I know that if my energy was even tied a little bit to Amazon, that it would just be, I would never make this other thing work. Like I couldn't do it because at any moment when I thought I needed money, if I got like anxiety about, I haven't made this much, maybe I start trying to take a coaching client. Maybe I just buy way more inventory. Maybe I start doing this stuff. And I just wanted to burn all the bridges. Like my Amazon seller account, I don't know how people get deactivated. I've just been doing nothing on there and I still haven't been deactivated. I have a 3% order defect. I'm getting bad reviews. I'm just like not paying attention to it. But then I publicly said like this was the last Amazon info thing. So I'm like burning these bridges to where I don't really have an option to not make it work. And that's good. Like you said, it's just an opportunity. It might not be spent a lot of time, but it is a lot of time. And it just gets really difficult with that. So that was my whole decision on it. I knew I wouldn't make anything else work if I could keep that in my back pocket. So I think your rationale behind it, if I was you, I'd probably sell the thing. Unless it's just providing you an insane amount of income that would just be stupid to get rid of,
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think too, something I'm really bullish on, and I don't know if people think about this, but like mental space is valuable. Like, I think you can only do so many things at once and like even your mind could only hold so much space. And like even like, oh, the website, this word needs to be updated. I need to update this in the booking software. I need to text the breweries today. I need to make sure, you know what I mean? I need to clean the bus, this and that. And like, Yeah, I don't know. You know, I will say to anyone, like, it's very hard to rip a band-aid of something that you've had going, but like, yeah. I, I think for me too, something else is like, I've always felt this way, and we've talked about this before, but like, the best word I can think of is alignment, right? When I started that, I was 29, and like, it wasn't about alignment and purpose and meaning. And by the way, I don't even love that stuff, because getting into that existential stuff is a mind F for me. Like, I can just go on and what's the purpose of all this? We're all going to die, blah, blah, blah. Right. But, but I do feel like I have a very, I think I have like a very strong ability to connect with people. I love talking to elders. I love soaking out wisdom. Um, you know, and like I just feel like in this day and age, there's so many opportunities, and I don't know. It's always like, I always ask the question, what should I be doing? And you know what was really easy? Middle school, you go to school. High school, you go to
Yeah.
school. College, you go to school. It's all laid out for you, right? And don't get me wrong. I mean, I wouldn't trade the path for anything, because I could never do like the corporate thing. But damn, if that isn't easier, it
Yeah.
would have been made my life easier for me individually. I'm not saying easier. Please don't take that the wrong way. And
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it would have made my life a lot easier, but I just couldn't do it. I can't do
I
it.
was just gonna say that because I've had a job too, and when you were just saying, it's like, I mean, me and Juve spoke for hours and hours of like, oh, what should the next move be? Like for both of us, because we both are doing, especially at the beginning of this year. If you go back and listen to the goals episode, we're not doing any of that stuff. Like it just didn't work
Yeah.
out that way. But like, yeah, it's easier just to show up to a job. It's like, what should I be doing? Well, whatever the boss says you should be doing, that's what you do. Show up at a certain amount of time. And yeah, I can like relate a lot to what you're thinking about because when I had the book business, like at a warehouse, I had equipment, and I kind of did the math, and it's like, well, what do I need to do to scale this? It was hire out a bunch of people. I didn't want to really do that, especially it was in COVID times, and everyone wanted like $18 an hour, which just wasn't
Yeah.
feasible. And just kind of thinking what I wanted my life to be, I was like, I just don't want to be shipped because like the book kind of really moved. If you're doing bulk, you got to do merch fulfilled. I was like, I did not sign up to ship out hundreds of
Yeah.
books every morning, and that's not what I want to do. And then it was also OA just seemed like something that aligned more with me. I didn't want to be, scanning thousands of books, like pushing 2,000-pound gaylords around, like worrying about the
Yeah.
worker that's like 150 pounds. Like, what if one of those boxes falls on him? And like, how does that work? And all that kind of stuff. And then it was just kind of getting a little taste. Okay, like try OA. All right, this tastes like pretty good, and then like kind of phasing it out a little and a little. And I think what I noticed, which it almost sounds like you're at now, like that tiny little bullshit that like you didn't really care to do, but you're like, like it's just part of the game. Like if you don't want to do that anymore, like text to breweries and do this and update the website, then
Yeah.
usually like you're kind of like phasing out, and it's probably better off like just to get what you could get for it. Because I think sometimes, and I notice this with the book business, I'm not saying this to knock your business or anything like that, but as I cared less about it, like more problems arose, and it becomes less and less attractive to get rid
Yeah.
of or to sell, or you're not taking care of equipment. So now it's like someone who buys it now has to fix it. So there's all that kind of stuff. So I feel like the best advice I ever got from someone was actually Caleb Roth. And I was deciding whether or not to quit my corporate job. And he's like, what you should do is flip a coin. And not for the result, but for what your gut says. Like I flipped it, it's
Yeah.
like, what do you want it to say? And like right then and there before you flip it over what you want it to be. And like he's usually like, that's usually the right choice. And sure enough, it was.
Yeah.
So I always used to use that mentally in my head. It's like, oh, if you flip the coin, like what would you want it to be? And usually that's been the path that was best for me.
Yeah. You know, I think something too I didn't mention, I think is incredibly valuable, especially as I get older. I think this is really clear to me. I think there's something to be said. You know how I'll preface it with this. Come New Year, why does everybody like that? In my opinion, it's because you get a fresh slate, right?
Yeah.
And I think when you're chipping away at something for 5 years, 10 years, I think very few people are wired to just do something infinitely. And so to me, the idea of a reset is really, really attractive. Time to like sit back, reevaluate who I am, what I want, and what my next moves are. Because for the last decade, it's just been go, 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 you know? Um, so yeah, I think that's something that's very attractive too. And I think sometimes just constantly staying busy, I'm really big on like stepping back, you know, and I try to like random stuff, but like when I can go to a sauna or try to get my thoughts together and stuff like that. And like, I just have a monkey mind, and it's like, I kind of just wish somebody would tell me what I have to do sometimes, you know?
I'm the
Well,
same way
I think
for sure.
one thing that like I had to do a lot of like mental work really to get to the point to do that and decide like that's for sure the decision I wanted to do, because there was just so much fear. And what I've learned, the more mental stuff and the more marketing stuff I learned too, all your decisions are basically based off fear of like fear of what you don't want to happen. So that's what I would try to look into more than anything. Like, what's the fear if you run this business for 5 to 10 more years? What's the fear if you quit? Because it's not like it's a hard decision really. It's just like you already know somewhere what you want to do, but it's just getting through all the fears of like, did I want to lose all this reputation I had in the Amazon space and not be that guy anymore? Right. I want to lose this income. And then I'm like, I don't care. All right, well, then we're fine here. And it got to that decision. So it's more of like, what are you fearful of? And I would start there. And then on the point of when you get rid of stuff, I would look at that kind of thing as an elimination diet. Like, you're going to get more productive with the more stuff you eliminate. A lot of times when you have skin issues or stuff like that, they say go on an elimination diet. Start with bare bones, just eat ground beef or whatever, and then add stuff in. That's another way. When you're restarting, that's how I like to do it. I literally restarted everything. I was like, I'm not doing anything except for this podcast was my only obligation for like 2 months. So I got to really choose what I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
So
yeah. You know, it's also, I think some wiring, and if I'll give my 2 cents on this to like younger folks, if they're listening. And I don't want this to come across as negative, but like, I think sometimes you get caught up in this idea of like, find your passion and you never work a day in your life. And like, you hear this more and more now, also countering that. And like, I truly don't believe that at all. Like, I really don't. I think you monetize a passion, everything becomes a job or a business at some point. And so I think that to me weighed on me for a little bit. I think I'm pretty clear on that now, that like, but I also think about, so I say that to say, I think sometimes it's very enticing to think about a glamorized life. Like, I don't know, I freaking love food, right? Like, would I love to be the next Anthony Bourdain? Like, of course, yeah, that'd be sick. But like, we only see the highlight reel, right? Of those videos and stuff like that. And I think it's more of like what lifestyle, you know, it's a combination of things. And it's not just what can I monetize? You know, it's like, I don't know. You know, I think it's also like, how much do I need? Like, truthfully, how much do I need? When is enough enough? Like, I live pretty simply. We live pretty simply. Like, we don't need that much. So if that's the case, like, you know, Tim Ferriss, very famous author, podcast, or whatever, he always says, like, truly, like, think of your worst case scenario, right? It's never that bad, you know? It's never that bad.
Yeah,
we just build it up, as you mentioned.
I have 2 things after this. I love like the thinking about the worst case scenario. So that's what I did for Amazon when I was about to quit my job. I literally remember being at Panera and I had like this big piece of paper. I just had all these columns, like worst case, best case, average, what do I think will happen? And when I looked at the worst case, like worst case, I was like, I will never let it get to that point. Like, it just couldn't get to that point. It just was so ridiculous. It's like move back in with your parents. Like, it's like, well, you're still safe. Like, you're with people you like. It was just so ridiculous. I'm like, it's never going to get to that place. And I think what you were saying before, I think when you're saying, like, I think your life just changes. Like, you get smarter. The more you're in business, the more you see things, the more you almost learn. Like, you literally went from Amazon to Walmart. Like, I'm sure the transition was a little bumpy or whatever, but you're like, wow, I literally just did this transition. Within a month, I'm doing 15 grand. And you're like, oh, I wonder what else this could be applied to. And maybe like you don't, you know, you just want to ease your business for like, seems like the beer business, you have a lot of it automated. but seems like you have a lot of details you have to like work out usually
Yeah.
or whatever. So maybe in your head you're like, well,
Yeah.
like I'm kind of in control of this Amazon thing and the Walmart thing, kind of have it like under control or whatever. Kind of looking for more of that, where like it's not like somewhere else 100%. I don't have to really deal with that,
Yeah.
and I think that's just like that's the hardest part for me too. Like I've been going through like a lot of different things, like how much more do I want to sell on Amazon? How much more do I want to spend on Amazon? And then as you taste different things, as I'm tasting the influencer program, like, wow, like this is kind of cool. Like I like this. Will I like it in a month? I don't know. I'm gonna keep going though. And I think there's like nothing wrong with that. And just like how like some of the best things like come about. Like some of the biggest companies too, like I don't think Twitter started out as Twitter or like there's all these like little things and now they're huge companies. So yeah, it's always just hard to make
Yeah.
a move. But I think once you start to get in that rut, you're like, oh, I'm so tired of doing this. Like it's time to like kind of move on.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, listen, there's infinite opportunities. I think too, something that people struggle with is like once you are pot committed or you have a sunk cost of time and or money, it's harder to walk away too. The way that an easy target is like a 20 something year old going to med school. They're 3 years in, 100 grand in debt. They got another, I don't know, 5, 6 years until they make a buck. And it's like, it's very scary to backpedal and say, you know what, I'm starting fresh, right? Yeah, no, and you know, it's kind of more like what's the word, philosophical, but like you never know if it's a good or bad decision. It's just an ongoing cycle, right? Like I think there's a lot of different examples. I don't know, metaphor is not the right word, but like um, you know, you make a decision, and you go on, and like you don't know if it was the best decision or not. You just then face the next decision, right?
Yeah, Hermoge's actually did a podcast today about that. I was like, that's the whole point of entrepreneurship. Like, you never know. Like, you start
Yeah.
it and like you hope, like you have some assumptions what it could be, what it might be, but like that's almost the whole point. Like, if you knew like you were gonna get X result, like it wouldn't be exciting or it wouldn't be fun or like
Right.
everyone would just be rich and successful and then it just wouldn't work.
Yep.
Yeah, I think
Totally.
one thing you were talking about the passion thing. I think the mix up in that message that people should be saying compared to like monetize you liking food or whatever. I think the more so is like what do you like to do, and not in a
Right.
sense of literally like I like to play basketball or something, but your personality type. I joined a group and I took 2 personality tests. It was Jordan Peterson's Big Five test. It does your personality. It's like $7. Then the Wealth Dynamics test, and it shows if you're a creator, if you're a mechanic. There's all these different things it puts you in. And these might be garbage, all right, but I took them. They were extensive, and it taught me more about myself from that than ever before. So I learned that like my extroversion is a 98%, and my creativeness is the highest thing. Although I've sat the last 4 years behind a computer, extremely introverted, just working away. And then I've started doing
Yeah.
this creative work, like visionary type stuff, and try to be more extroverted, get on more calls with people, that type of thing. Way more fulfilled. I'm offering people
Yeah.
just stuff for free. Like I'll help you, man. I just want to help because I like talking about it. So I think taking those tests kind of showed me, all right, what do I actually like to do? And not just what do I think do I like to do? What do I answer questions, the truth of? So then
Yep.
I kind of reversed it from there. Like, where do I see my life based on what I really like to do? Because those things aren't going to change. Those are like built when you're a little kid. Like your
Yeah.
personality doesn't really change. That's a lot like when you're 4 to 7 years old. That's why I like them. How can I align my life more with like what I'm passionate about truly? Not the thing I'm passionate about, but like what I like to do every single day. And that's why I came to the
Yep.
conclusion of doing all this stuff I want to do too. I hated talking. I think too, I was in a position to where like the information thing, I love coaching people, but I really hated dealing with certain personality types or talking about Amazon all the
Mhm.
time and that type of thing. Where my goal in the
Yeah.
future, I'd love to do coaching, but I'd like to do
Yeah.
it with, I can deny you. Like I can be like, I don't want to talk to you, man. Like
Right.
you have to pay me like 10 grand, 15 grand, or I'm just not dealing with you. But if you do
Right.
pay me that, I don't care to get on calls with you for the next year. Because I have guys that paid me over a year ago that I get on calls with every week still. And they pay me barely
Yeah.
anything. I just love their personality so much. That's where I want
I
my
agree.
life to be in the future. And that's kind of how I reversed it. So I would consider that. Take those 2 tests, man. You'll probably learn a ton that you didn't even realize.
All right. No, totally. It's funny you say that because like one thing I'm so in tune with, like when I when I have good conversation, like I don't like the stereotypical small talk. Like I'll go to a coffee shop, I'll talk to anybody, right? And if we get into like good stuff with a stranger, like my cup is like so full, like I'm so jacked up. I'm like, that's what it's all about, baby. Like that just made my day, but really like deep conversation, not the weather, right? And
Yeah.
like I think about stuff like that. Like, what are the stuff that light me up, and what stuff drains me? And I know that's kind of cliche because you hear that stuff all the time now if you're like online like we are, but like it's true, it really is true.
Yep. You have to like protect it. Like, a lot of stuff does
Yeah.
drain you too when you don't even realize it. That was a lot of me looking back too. I just realized all these little things that really drain you out. I know you said something earlier, John, about you just do it because you're kind of in the weeds of the business. But when you look back, like
Right.
now, me going to ship an FBM item, it's the hardest part of my day. I'd rather go do an hour
Yeah.
workout than go ship. I'm like, a lot of times I'm like, I'm just not doing this. Like, this guy's just not getting it. It's getting canceled because it's just such a hassle now in comparison to what I was in the day to day doing it over and over.
Yeah, like when you first start saying shit, man, try feed the beast, feed the beast. Then you get a prep center, you're like, I'll never feed the beast myself again. Like,
Oh
forget
yeah.
about that. Like,
100%.
this is
Love
annoying.
me, love me a good prep center.
Oh yeah.
Well, you guys got anything else to talk about? You got anything, John?
Yeah, actually, you want to break down kind of for the people. We talked about it a little bit, but you had a really good Instagram post about the why you should keep your W-2 job. And a lot of people almost think, and I was actually thinking about this today at the gym, how much you actually have to make to actually kind of like quit your W-2 job based on kind of how you have to invest. You have to go through the numbers. You go to his Instagram post and go break it down. But I just thought you had a really, really good take on that.
Yeah. So, again, there's never a one size fits all, never a blanket statement, but basically, I've thought about this from my own experience to begin with. So, I went cold turkey on a corporate job for a different business, so not Amazon. And now I've had enough time to reflect and be like, I know in that moment, you hear things like, take the lead, burn the bridges. And like in some regards, like every situation's unique. But especially for Amazon, something that you can do on nights and weekends and lunch break, and for a lot of people during their job, I think what happens is they get to certain jobs or they're in positions where like they just can't take it anymore. But the thing with Amazon is that it's very cash intensive and it's a retail business. And so like you're not going to get that steady cash flow, especially early on. It takes time. It really does. I think that's a major, major misconception. And I think everybody goes through a cash flow hiccup or learning lesson, or, at some point in time. And basically to the post, it was just saying, if you can pay your bills with one job, let's say, and you can just take Amazon and get better and better and better and just keep rolling it over at very modest rate, the difference after a year or 2 years is like drastic, like truly drastic. And I do want to point out, just to clarify, I'm not saying once you're established in Amazon to necessarily roll all of your profits continuously. I'm just saying for an example, a short extended period of time, that the compounding nature and the ability to continue rolling profits will get you to where you want to be much quicker. So I think if anything, get away. If you really hate a job, find another job and do Amazon, as opposed to quit the bad job just for Amazon, because I think most people are in for a very rude awakening, and it takes a while to get good. You're not going to start making 10K profit a month, despite what you may think.
Yeah, there's so much to that too, because that's what I did. So like, I think it's always hard because I feel like sometimes you assume like, I've been on social media, I don't know, 3, 4 years at this point. And like, you just feel like everyone already knows the story. You don't want to repeat it or whatever. But when I had a 9 to 5, it took me, I think, almost 2 years before I quit my Amazon business. And I didn't take anything out. Like, it just kept, I was doing books. So
Yeah.
it's a little different. It's not as cash intensive, but I mean,
Right.
it's the same concept. And I left to do books, so it is what it is. And I think when you have to look at it like that, I also had a 9 to 5 where I was banking a lot of money into an emergency fund because, that was kind of my exit or whatever. And then you also have to look at, and it's not a knock on people who start younger, But like if you don't have to pay rent, you don't have health insurance, you don't have car payment, like that's like a good 1,500 to 2 grand worth of expenses that like you don't have to account for. And that's not a knock on them at all. But I think a lot of people need to take that into consideration. Like if you have kids and a mortgage and all that stuff, it looks much differently for you than someone like me
Right.
who doesn't have any kids or anything like that.
It's funny you say that because I actually do always have. I'm glad you mentioned that because I always like to throw the disclaimer that if you're young or have nothing to lose, like, dude, run up a credit card and go balls to the wall because what is the worst that happens? Live at home if you can, live on ramen and go balls to the wall and you have nothing, you literally have nothing to lose. Worst case scenario, you go bankrupt, right? Your business, you go bankrupt and you're 28 and all clear and whatever. And if you're going to be an entrepreneur anyway, you can do other things and get creative. Like it doesn't matter. So that would be the only wrinkle in my opinion is like, if you have nothing to lose, you have nothing to lose. You know what I mean? But if you have $5,000 worth of living expenses, and it's going to press you and you're going to be stressed and you have a rent or mortgage to pay for, like, I think that's a different situation.
Yes, I didn't see the post. I don't get on Instagram at all, but I saw like a little hint of it on there. What's the, maybe this wasn't exactly what it was. What's the total take home pay of someone per year from Amazon? Because when I really think about it, let's say you sell $1 million worth of stuff. How much do you take home? Like 3%, the 2%? It's got to be very low, maybe around there. So you got to think, if you're thinking of making $100K a year, you're probably going to have to sell a lot of shit to do that.
I think a couple of things would be variables for that off the top of my head, though. Like if you're someone scaling just straight like that to $1 million, your take home's very, very low. But if you're someone that gets to a point, let's say that you're spending $40K a month, $80K in sales every month, but like you're true to that number after a couple of years in, I think you can probably get that substantially higher to like pulling out a decent chunk. But I do know what you're saying. The post was basically side by side. If two people start with 20K, one person and they both get to go month after month, 20% ROI. So very modest ROI, 20%. Person A starts with 20K, takes out 5K a month, grows and turns over their inventory every month, which is a little unrealistic, but just at 20% ROI, come month 9, they're out of money. Okay. They've made 40 grand profit. They're out of money though, personally and professionally. Person B starts with 20K, same metrics, 20% ROI, uses their W-2 to pay that $5,000 living expense. So they roll everything over. By month 9, they have $103,000 and they're continuing to compound month after month. So in summary, person A is literally broke. Person B has paid all their expenses with the W-2 and has a snow pile of 103 that they can continue to use however they want, right? And again, take the numbers with a grain of salt. The concept is true.
100%. Yeah, I was about to say that the numbers really aren't even relevant there. The relevant thing is one guy's broke and one guy has a lot of money, and that's like couldn't be more true.
Yeah. And that one guy is probably even more broke because something bad definitely happened.
Yeah.
Those 9 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's saying no mistakes even happen. They could lose 20K because the brand gets restricted. It'd be crazy, Something like that can happen too. But yeah.
No, totally. No.
All right, now do you have anything else to talk about, John? I'm sure you got something good. That guy's minutes in me.
Me or me, John?
All right, so
I keep forgetting you all's names are the same. Either way.
So if you were to start over again, Jonathan, how would you approach it? Knowing what you know now, so you have your knowledge.
Knowing what I know now, I think it would be hard. Okay, so if I started with, if I was able to take all of my information now, I think I would probably put that energy into private label if I was going to do Amazon. And because I think that I like the equity play. And it's not just equity, you can make money monthly too. But other than that, I like as far as my path right now, like I went RA, No, I'm at OA. Like I can't really think there's too many things I would have done drastically different, to be very honest with you. Um, I learned on RA. I got tired of it, like so many people. It's just not. You have to be out and about. Even though the people that have the tolerance make huge margins.
Yeah.
So I think that's awesome for beginners. But for me, like I got it. That's the only thing I can really think of. Is just. I probably would have done private label if I could take my knowledge now with me and try to figure that out.
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a good answer. Yeah, it's tough. Not that I hate to just shit on Amazon all the time, but I think that the problem that you run into with the Amazon thing is you either want to be in a business that's cash flowing you a bunch or you're building equity in, ideally both.
Right.
And it's like Amazon doesn't do either of those things. So it makes it really difficult because you're not just getting like 10K spit out a month. Because if you had like a high margin business, you're taking a lot, but then you're not built. The point of the low margin is to build a big brand that you can sell. So
right.
To me, I
exactly.
I would do something very similar as well. Because I think getting into e-com in general is pretty cool. Like the idea of it's good, but having an equity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you also would have a different framework for it because you'd be more patient with it because right? Like when you have inventory, you're ideally trying to sell it as quick as possible. Obviously, you want to kind of keep ROI in perspective and stuff like that. But for this, you'd be like, no, like I want to get this right. Like let's get it, sell it at the right price because, maybe down the line, if we could get, if we're selling it for $12, we can move it fast. But if we could sell it for 15, that impacts the valuation down the line. Like you start thinking like much, much differently. And I think that's definitely an interesting concept. I don't really hear, aside from capital, but like what kind of issues people have with private label at the end. Like all the arbitrage issues and stuff like that. So it'd be kind of interesting to kind of see like what road bumps are there, besides like getting started and finding the right product and stuff like that. Because it almost makes it seem like once you have that product, like you're good forever. And like I don't know if I necessarily think that'd be the case, but I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know. And actually, it's funny to knowing what I know now, which is impossible. I might have, if I said, hey, I'm going to sprint for Amazon for 5 years or whatever, I might have figured out a remote super cake job, even if it paid $50K a year, whatever. But like I could work very, very minimally, just kind of get by knowing it's not really a career move. And that would have expedited the process too. Hindsight's so 2020. It's like, whatever,
It is. You got to think though, this is going to help someone, us saying.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, you're right. I would say then like, I do think like if you're interested in Amazon, have a job you don't hate, try to get it so you work as few hours as possible, remote maybe, just something so that you can build that snowball. The other way is to, if you have tremendous capital, credit cards, whatever, but now you're playing the risk game of your own stuff and opportunity cost. If I have 200K to start, well, I probably should be putting it into some other stuff too. You know what I mean? So like, that's where it's kind of like a moot point. But if I was starting off for a modest amount, 10, 20K, like if you really want to get the ball going, like knowing what I know now, I think you just have to find a job that you like, or you can tolerate with the big picture.
I love that because that was always my issue or my theory when I was doing this. When I moved from New York to Pennsylvania, and I was like, I'm gonna get a job that doesn't require much of me because I knew I want to do something else. I was like, I need that space. Yeah. Like when in New York, like you have to be like in the industry I was working on, you always have to be checking email. You got to be, if a client calls, all that stuff. So when I moved to PA, it was just like, no, none of that stuff. Like you basically go 9 to 5, that's it. And when I hated my job, I was like, this is funding your business. That's how I looked at it. I was like, this is what is allowing you to do this. Like, and you would have the best shot. Yes, like I get it. If you're like, you got to take a risk or whatever. And I knew I was going to take that risk eventually. I was like, when you do make the leap though, the longer you can stick it out, the better shot you have. Like the bigger emergency
Yeah.
fund you have and you don't have to worry about, or the more capital you have to dump back into the business, that's what's going to really make you make it, instead of quitting prematurely and kind of being short and stressed and all that kind of stuff. And people ask all the time, they're like, I don't understand. How do you fund the business? How do you fund the business? Like a job. That's how you fund it.
Yeah.
Like you got to find a
Yeah.
job, live below your means, have that balance, be an emergency fund, and then suck it up for a year or two. And hopefully you can build an emergency fund 6 months should something go wrong, and you can just breathe easy.
I think it's one of the downsides of the low barrier to entry with Amazon is that like the success rate of everyday businesses, whether it's brick and mortar services, is much it's not drastically high, right? It's not like so, but like you can start Amazon tomorrow and you see all your peers on social media and they're like doing this, and this, and it's like I could see where it's confusing to people and it's not like being portrayed accurately. And that's why like, yeah, I mean, like you just said, but like I think except for certain situations, a job would really, really help you not be as stressed and like speed up the process if that's what you really want to do.
Yep. I'll say a short thing on if you don't have a job. So a lot of young guys like me, maybe I don't know, whatever it is. If I could restart, it'd be very. Let's say I have to stick with the Amazon thing. I can't just do something else. I would write down everything I ever do in the Amazon business and systematize it into a big process, and I would get into the information game as fast as possible. Because if you look at what the top guys around all this stuff are doing, they're all in info because it's high margin, and they keep the Amazon thing going because it's like a learning process. It's like an asset over by itself. It's barely making them any money. But I would recommend if somebody's this deep into the pod and you really want to make this work, and I'm not saying make 100K, I'm saying make like 3, 4, 500K a year, something crazy with this business. Write down everything you do, turn it into a system, package it up, and sell it to other people, and make sure it works and make sure it doesn't break. A lot of guys, their systems aren't good enough, so they break. That was like me. I tried to just take one-on-one calls, do that thing. I broke. There's just not enough capacity. You only have so many hours. You can't do one-on-one calls. You have to create a system and break it down. So I think that's, if you really want to get rich doing this stuff, like rich, that's how you do it. That's like the reality of the game. Nobody talks about that on socials, but that is the reality of it.
No, yeah. I mean, I think you can just, I always say like it's probably more lucrative to teach 20 people how to make 50K than try to make $1 million yourself just off of the thing itself. You know what I mean? And nothing is wrong with that. Nothing's wrong with that at all. Like, so, I think you're absolutely right on that.
Yeah, the stigma against it's just rough. Like it's,
yeah.
I had a tweet about it. I don't know if you saw that, John, but I put the tweet of like, there's no nobility in poverty. Cause I used to like hate on the info guys. And I'm like, dude, I just look like a brokey, like as Tate would say. I just look like so jealous and stuff. And now that I'm like, have done it, I'm like, man, the real reason a lot of times hate is on that is because people just don't believe they can do it. They don't believe they can help people. They don't believe they can get attention. And it's like, that's the reality of it. Because if you could, you'd do it.
Yeah.
You're selling knickknacks on Amazon. You ain't that morally high.
Right.
So it's like hard to judge.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah.
Totally. I do hope to get into that. I know we've talked about it, but just for on air, like that's my next hope with this is like, I'm pretty content with my spend. I want my ROI to continue to climb a little, but like all the years of content, the years of information, I have that confidence of, I know I can share, I can really like help people. And so that's what I'm plotting my move to get into the info game, education, whatever you want to call it, something that I'm proud of, I feel good of. That's kind of my next thought with like, if I'm going to monetize Amazon, it's that way, not just doubling my spend.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think
I agree. Yeah. I think you just have to know like where you're at. Like I swore up and down that I would never have another Discord or like another community because like you're always answering questions. Not that I didn't like that, but weirdly enough, when I didn't have it, I definitely missed it. And that's kind of what got me to start the school again and like just helping people every day and doing that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know. I just really like doing that. And yeah, I'm at a point now too. I never wanted the biggest Amazon business. I didn't want to be doing $2, $3, $4 million. Like that just wasn't the path. I always know it deep down that I always like just making content, and
Yeah.
the idea one day would be like, wow, if I could actually put time into the YouTube channel, or like, actually edit it and do stuff like that instead of just giving information, like that would be nice and could be beneficial. So yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I think sometimes too, the biggest thing for me, it's just I don't know, like we were talking about too, like the stigma of it. Like as soon as you say something, they're going to be like, oh, like you're selling out, like does he really make money? And then you find yourself like fighting like to prove that you know what you're doing, or you actually still sell and all this other stuff. Um, this becomes like this whole thing, and like it's just so funny. Like you probably remember a lot of it too because you've been doing it for 4 years. Like you used to like post a picture of your orange bars. Everyone would do it every month, and like no one would say bad shit about it. Now you do that today, it's almost like everyone's like, "You're an asshole." Like, don't share that. You just put an enormous target on your back because now someone's gonna find your storefront. It's gonna match up, like how many units. So it's like I don't share numbers anymore,
Yeah.
and it's like you don't think I know what I'm doing. Like you don't have to follow. Like that's totally fine with me. So I think it just goes in these circles, and you just have to be. I think eventually, like you're just confident. There's really
Oh, yeah.
not one question someone could ask me that I'm not going to know. Like I know someone else right now who's basically created a course and is in another course. And basically, when one of their students gets stuck, he asks the course that he's in, and then basically copy and paste that answer to. And it's just like it's this crazy
Yeah.
cycle or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
and like eventually you're just like, yeah, whatever. And I think too, it's your attitude about it. It's like I think it's like when you don't need it, it's super obvious. Like I'm not
Yeah.
shoving down the school down anyone's throat because I have a profitable Amazon business that I take out what I need every month. Like I'm putting it into retirement. Like everything's good. This is just kind of cherry on the top to help people out.
Right.
Something I can sleep at night, like charging $50 for a school. So yeah, I think that's
Totally.
how you just have to look at it. And then, like you were saying before, like do something that like kind of works for you and that you're going to be excited about doing.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah. No, all spot on, and to each their own. And we all have to look ourselves in the mirror and whatever we're comfortable with, right?
For sure.
Yep. Any closing remarks? Promote yourself, Jonathan,
Yeah.
wherever you would like to.
Yeah. I'll just say that if you've made it this long, like speaking of that, I am actively working on my first project to put out there, which I'll talk to you guys after this in a second. So be on the lookout for that. If you follow my social, Duke Does Amazon, Instagram, YouTube are the best ways to find me. And then everything's Duke Does Amazon. So you could find it all there. And I try to share things that, are practical that I go through every single day.
Yeah, he has really good content. It's very well thought out and kind of, it's just like, I almost envision when you make some of your content or your threads or whatever, like something literally just happened to you and you're like, I got to write this down right now. And it's not like hypey kind of bullshit.
It happens a lot, actually. So I'm glad that comes through. I mean, that's one of the things. I'm in it every day. So I'm constantly facing these things. Like it's not theory, it's reality, right? And then I just share kind of my process, how I did it, and I try to articulate it in the simplest way possible.
Yeah, for sure. So go give him a follow, guys. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff. And thanks for being here, Jonathan. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Peace.
Peace.
See you guys.